Good morning, everyone. This is Saturday Morning Breakfast, a program of the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton. And Stowe TV is recording this program for later broadcast on their YouTube channel. Today, our speaker is Henry Patterson, who will talk about the world's central kitchen. But before that, I got a couple of announcements. Of course, this show today is on Zoom, and maybe in September, we'll be back into the church. And I've been working with Brad, our music director, and trying to come up with a drum circle for September. So keep on the lookout for any announcements with that. There will be not a breakfast in July or August. So this is a serious subject today, but I thought I'd start out with a question of the day, which I normally do. And in honor of Henry's experience with Italian restaurants, the question is, what's your favorite Italian food? But it can't be pizza. So anything but pizza. And I'll start. I think my favorite food right now, Italian food, would be some kind of a squash ravioli with olive oil and a pesto sauce. So, Ann Wickham, what's your favorite Italian food?
Cannolis.
Okay.
Any kind.
Okay. Wanda?
Eggplant Parmesan.
Oh, that sounds good. Jonathan?
Oh, any kind of pasta with seafood with a nice sauce.
Okay, sounds good. Lee?
Shrimp scampi.
Okay. The Lulls? Jeff and Ruth?
I'm a pasta person myself. Love it.
I'll be politically incorrect. Veal scallopini.
Rick Lent.
Pasta primavera.
Okay, that's good. And let's see, Marion. Oh, you're on mute, Marion.
Okay, I'm going with the eggplant parm.
Oh yeah, that's all right. And my wife, Linda, you need to unmute. Oh, maybe she's not even there. Okay, I think, did I get everybody? I think so. All right, so today we've got Henry Patterson. Thanks for coming, Henry, today. And the floor is yours.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Jeff. I've talked quite a bit about my experience cooking at the border of Ukraine in the last few weeks. And I thought actually I would start with a little differently. I want to talk about three basic insights of Jose Andreas's that led to the creation of World Central Kitchen. I'm not somebody who would say I have a lot of heroes in my world, but I do now. I do think that Jose Andreas is the hero of the food service industry, of our industry. And I mean that quite seriously. Let me show you what Jose looks like. There are very few pictures of him smiling. But it started really for him with Katrina. World Central Kitchen didn't exist yet in 2005. But Jose, trained in Spain, in Barcelona. He was in the Spanish military, which I think was also influential in some aspects of World Central Kitchen. But he cooked in the military cooked for an admiral. But then he was in he progressively to the greatest restaurants in Spain. He was at Ibuli for 3 years. But then he came to the States and very successfully introduced the concept of tapas, of small plates. He's generally credited as the chef who brought small plates to the American dining scene. He has an interest today in 20 different restaurants around the United States, and that included New Orleans when Katrina occurred. And one of the things that he just was horrified by was to see thousands of people herded into a stadium in New Orleans with no plan for how they would be fed or even provided with water. Katrina was so badly handled by FEMA, and it haunted him when the earthquake struck Haiti in 2010. You know, that earthquake was a 7 on the Richter scale. I mean, it was a massive earthquake, and thousands of buildings all went down at once, and tens of thousands of people were killed. But they lost their electrical system, their government buildings, hospitals, airport, all of it just was destroyed in a blink. And Jose went to Haiti. Still, World Central Kitchen didn't exist yet. But he went to see what he could do. He had many Haitian employees in his restaurants. And he realized, and this is the first of the 3 kind of fundamental ideas or insights, is that when a disaster occurs and all of a sudden people can't do normal things to be fed, it is very, very dangerous. When people are hungry, civility breaks down, society breaks down. Disaster relief just has to start with food, because people start making really bad decisions. People condone violence when they think that people that they care about or they themselves are in danger of starving. They become lawless, and it's an understandable. You know, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, if you think your very survival is threatened, niceties become lower priority. So this was the beginning in his mind of World Central Kitchen, because he just declared, we've got to be organized when there's a disaster to be there and feed people, because they think differently, they behave differently, and they can respond to the situation. And this is a fundamental idea which, and I've talked recently with some people who think about world health, and they're saying, there really has never been an organization committed to making sure that when a disaster occurs, their sole focus is on making sure people are fed until now. And this man has single-handedly made that vision come to life. And now, it's a massive organization with capacity unlike any government agency, which gets us to the second insight, which is we can produce 1 million meals a day in Ukraine today with a volunteer army. A volunteer army who of chefs and of people who will work with chefs and do what they're told to do. It's a really inspiring thing to participate in. I was just stunned from the very first day at how fierce the spirit was in that kitchen. That picture behind me is the kitchen that I worked in. And we had fun. It was great camaraderie, but there was an intensity and a focus unlike any kitchen I'd ever worked in before. So the second insight is that food service people, real food service people, have to cook. We need to feed people. It's who we are. We don't feel right with ourselves if we're not feeding people around us. It's how we express our caring. And it really has little to do with being paid. And Jose knows and laughs about, when he laughs, which is not that often, laughs about the fact that there are a lot of people working in his restaurants making $100 plates who would rather work in World Central Kitchen, because there we're feeding people who really need it. And it has nothing to do with our getting the paycheck. It's about doing what we do to feel right with ourselves and doing it for people who, in the case of the Ukrainian refugees, who desperately needed a sense that civilization still exists. The Russians have done Putin has done just an incredibly despicable thing. They're destroying a country. And those people saw they had to get their children out of there. You understand that the refugees that we were feeding were basically women with children under the age of 10, and some elderly. But martial law was declared in Ukraine appropriately, and all of the men were 18 to 60 were told either stay in your job if it's healthcare or if it's critical to the economy to keep things going here. But otherwise, everybody else is supposed to join and assist the military, the men. There were, and the women who had little kids rightly said, we just got to get these children out of here. And many of them left before the war affected their homes. But by the time I got there, which was at the end of March, the refugees that we were seeing were not the ones who planned to leave. They were the ones who thought they were going to somehow stay until their homes were bombed and their towns were destroyed and their children witnessed people being murdered. And they fled with no plan and no provisions. And many of them got on trains, and the first stop outside of Ukraine, going into Poland, was in Medica, and the kitchen that I worked in was in Przemyśl, which is like right next door to Medica. I mean, we were at the border and greeting people who were mostly at night, who were arriving with a few possessions and the hands of their children, one in each hand, holding their children, and not knowing where they were going to go or what they were going to do. And the idea that there were people there making hot food for them is just such a fundamental, correct thing to do. So which this picture, what you're looking at here, by the way, is goulash in a pan that's 6 foot in diameter, and it's fired. And there's propane burners underneath that, which you can't quite see in this picture, but it's when you're making food for thousands of people at a time, you make it in very big batches. I can remember as early in my career, working in a kitchen and being getting a prep list that said, prep out a case of peppers. It was like, a whole case? You want me to wash and core and dice a whole case of peppers? Well, now we're talking about 72 cases of peppers. And then, and 96 cases of zucchini, and, and on and on and on. I've never really thought about potatoes this way, but this is potatoes. If you're turning out the kind of meals that we were turning out. So food service people need to feed people. It's who we are. And then the third point is that while we're a first responder organization, it's also a chef's organization. And what does that mean? And this is the other fundamental insight of Jose's, is that it's not enough to just turn out food. It has to be great. It has to, believe it or not, we have to think like chefs while we're producing 10,000 meals a day. We have to put out food that's going to be memorable. We have to put out food that is going to stop people. Not only is it going to nourish them and take care of their basic needs, but it's going to convey caring and feed their will to go on, feed their sense that here's some people who have really thoughtfully cared about what we're eating. We made that goulash was a kind of a basic idea, because whatever produce could be gathered and shipped to that kitchen, it all got prepped and put into a big stew, and then it was the chef's challenges to season that and get the proportions right so that it really worked. But we also made sandwiches, and a really memorable experience for me was this when we were first briefed about the sandwiches we were going to make, and the point was made that this has got to be the best sandwich that the people that are going to eat it have ever had. And by the way, we're going to make thousands of them this afternoon. And so the key to the deal is the mayo. We're making ham and cheese sandwiches, but we're also going to make the mayonnaise, and we're going to herb that mayonnaise primarily with dill. But we want the sandwich to be really, the sandwiches weighed over a pound a piece, because they were like, there's a layer of bread, and then there's 6 slices of ham and a few slices of cheese, and then there's another layer of mayo, and then and it's like a club sandwich. So there's a bread in the middle, more mayo. More mayo is kind of the battle cry of making a great ham and cheese sandwich. Then there's another layer of ham, another layer of cheese, another bread, and then it's got to be wrapped correctly, and then wrapped in cellophane, wrapped in paper first and then in cellophane, because anybody who gets that sandwich can take it with them, and it'll feed them all day long. But it should also, every time they bite into it, they should get that mayo, that flavor, and think, geez, I never had a sandwich this good. And I think that we did accomplish that. We made 4,000 of them that first day. And in that fiercely competitive kitchen, it became a thing each day to how many can we turn out. I think the record is 11,000 sandwiches. And so you've got to have people there committed to feeding people in a disaster situation. You can tap the food service world and get us to come and do it, and with no concern for getting paid. And we'll do it in a way that brings sensibilities and caring to what we produce, so that not only do we feed people and restore civility to the situation, but we actually feed their willingness to go on and their hope. And I'm very proud to have participated in it and to have learned what I've learned from Jose and from the people who have now made it their career to make World Central Kitchen happen. We're making 1 million meals a day in Ukraine now. There are kitchens all over the country, as well as on the Polish side of the border. And if you're not aware of it, World Central Kitchen has also been where many other disasters have occurred since Haiti until Ukraine. They were, it was Zimbabwe, and it was Bermuda, and certainly Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was a big turning point in the organization. But it's now also in the U.S. They're at when the wildfires in New Mexico. There's that kitchen may still be going. It's just an extraordinarily humane and sensible thing that has flourished outside of the government system, just by professional human beings. I'm pleased to say that Jeff Bezos has given $100 million to World Central Kitchen, which is guaranteed that it's going to continue to grow. And shortly you'll see a film by Ron Howard about it. And I think his message is also one that is worth noting here before I take your questions about my experience there. And that's that the act of volunteering, and I think this is the message of the film that's going to be out shortly, that volunteering is transformative. And I think it's been really important for a lot of food service people who've participated in this, not only to have done it, but to understand that it changes who you are. It changes how you think about what's important in the world. And I don't know if you haven't done it lately. I certainly recommend it. So I'll stop the slideshow, but can I go back to there, because that's the thing that I really want everybody to understand. It's urgent, and there's going to be more and more, because of what's happening with the climate. There's going to be more and more disaster situations, and there's going to be more people displaced from their homes. There's going to be more refugees. There's going to be more and more challenges to society and civility in the world because of what's happening with the climate. And frankly, World Central Kitchen is one of the only things that makes me feel hopeful about that whole mess. So I'll stop there and be happy to take your questions.
Yeah, so I've muted people, so if you want to ask a question, you can go ahead and unmute. But I'll start with, so you showed a picture of a 6-foot pot.
Yeah.
I mean, how many 6-foot pots are there in the world?
Oh, there's many. Don't worry. That actually is a paella pan. In Spain, that's a something that parties, like caterers use. Jose was quite familiar with it from his Spanish military experience as well. World Central Kitchen has a vast supply of them. And one of the miraculous things about Shemesh, the kitchen that I worked in, which is like a 5,000 square foot kitchen where 50 people can work on any given day. It has a walk-in refrigerator that you can drive a van into to load and unload. That was erected in something like 10 days. I mean, Putin invaded on the 24th of February, and we were making food in that. I wasn't there yet, but food was being produced in that kitchen on the 4th of March, which was only like 8 days later. But this is, the organization's 12 years old now, and they've set up kitchens, in urgent, disaster situations many, many times now. They know how to do it. And it's an extraordinary thing.
Rick, you got a question?
Yeah, I do. First, thank you, Chef. Powerful, great, important work. How does the World Central Kitchen relate to the World Food Program?
I don't know.
They don't supply you.
If they, I don't know that they don't. I don't know either way. I know that truckloads of food showed up, and I know that actually the day before I arrived, one of my friends who was also there accompanied Jose to a farmer's market that was a few miles away from the kitchen in Poland. And they looked at what was there, and Jose was satisfied with the quality of it. And he just said, we'll take it all. And the farmers said, what? I said, no, everything, we'll get the trucks over here. And they loaded everything in that farmer's market and brought it back to the kitchen. But obviously that was partly because I think Jose was eager to get more produced than we had supply for. So we said, we got to go find some more product. But it could very well be that the program you're referencing is tapped because we had, like the potatoes picture that I showed you, this was not farmers market stuff. This came off of trucks that were just packed with. So I don't know.
Yeah, because they are, the world's largest distributor of food, free to refugee areas and so forth. And it would be bulk like these potatoes or flour or things like that. You had a question, Sharon?
Do they serve one meal a day?
Oh, yeah. Do you serve one meal a day or three or two or something?
Oh, no, it goes, like the distribution center that I also worked at one of the refugee camps, sort of, and that was open 24/7.
Oh, okay.
So people could just come up to that counter and get hot food at any hour of the day or night, because people were in that center, which was a dead shopping center that was converted to the purpose. Some of what had been stores were now sleeping quarters, with cots as far as you could see. But others of the old prior stores were now offices of various organizations and various, in some cases, other countries. And there was a chapel and a pharmacy and our store was where people could come and get something to eat. And they were manned, day and night. But you'd see people getting on buses, you'd see somebody carrying a sign that said Berlin, and there's a whole stream of people following that person carrying that sign up to a bunch of buses to get them on the buses and get them on their way. And that stuff was just going on all day, all night. It has slowed down tremendously now. The 7 million plus people who have left Ukraine are pretty much, there's, unless new areas get bombed, which very well may occur, there will be another rush of exodus. But
So how has the problem with food shortages in, Russia and Ukraine and food prices, how's that impacted your program?
I've not heard that it's interrupted our ability to produce. I have a feed on my phone with the volunteers. They're not people that are in charge. They're people like me that went there and cooked. And I've never seen anything about there being an issue with materials to work with.
Agree.
The world is threatened by the interruption of export from Ukraine, particularly Africa. From what I understand, it's a coming crisis, and it may very well be that World Central Kitchen is going to need to be in a lot of places in Africa because of it. I don't know.
So if there was a disaster in Acton, say, and you set up a kitchen, you'd probably serve hamburgers and pizza or something. So when you go to Ukraine, how do you figure out what is comfort food for them? I mean, say they don't, maybe tomatoes isn't in their diet.
You're absolutely right. It's important that it be food that the audience you're feeding relates to. So it was different in Haiti and Zimbabwe and Ukraine. I mean, it was not an accident that we were doing goulash, but it didn't stop us from doing ham and cheese sandwiches too. We had local restaurants that partnered with us who made tons and tons of rice and pasta, and then we were serving that goulash in a container that first would get either the rice or the here's Paulo. You see this container would get some rice or some pasta, their choice, and then we would put the ladle of goulash over it into that it's like a disposable soup container, and people could put a lid on that and take it with them, and it would be hot food an hour later, or they could just take it right then and there and eat it. You know. This is Paolo Volpati-Cadra, by the way. He's the founder of a $50 million sauce company that produces in both Italy and the U.S. And he's there ladling goulash. He's an old friend of mine. I helped him start in business, actually, and we went together. But there were people there who. There was a guy who was a C-suite level executive in the Chicago Stock Exchange, peeling potatoes with me, as well as, you know, there are obviously chefs from all over, but and restaurant owners, but there were also people who just had to do something and came, and who had the means to just fly themselves there and put themselves up and participate in this. There are people who had sold their company. There were a lot of guys my age, you know, a lot, and women too, who needed to do something about this atrocity that Putin has delivered to the world.
How did you find accommodations for yourself and the other workers?
Yeah, it was dicey because there were many organizations that you know came to the border and occupied all of the housing that, you know, that there was. We were in a little pension in Medica, very close to the border. We found it online, and you had to be willing to share a bathroom and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it was quite decent. I got COVID and had to stop working, and I also had to leave the pension because of the shared bathroom. So I ended up driving myself back to Warsaw and, you know, holding up in a hotel until I could get a negative test and fly home. But scrambling for that's part of what this the feed on the phone with all the volunteers is trading information about housing. Honestly, that is something that everybody has to solve for themselves there.
So can I ask about the supplies going along the lines of, you know, the local cuisine? Is the focus on getting whatever food you need from the country that you are in, or is there all of a sudden a mobilization internationally where all this food comes in, whatever you feel you need at the time?
Yeah, you know, Rick asked a related question, and it's honestly, I'm realizing I don't know much about that end of things. I never was involved with the procurement, other than that experience that Paulo had of going with Jose to the farmer's market and taking everything that was there. But most of the stuff was arriving in big truckloads, and I just never questioned where it was coming from. But there is definitely an idea that people leading the group were deciding what we were going to make and making sure that it was relevant to the people we were feeding, and you know, that it would speak to their sensibilities. You know, you want them to feel comforted. So what's their comfort food? That's what we're making. But we're going to make it with a chef's mentality. We want to elevate it a little bit so that they, you know, they notice that it's good.
Great. So any other questions for Henry? Well, this has been great.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoy talking about it and sharing my enthusiasm for it. When Ron Howard's film comes out, you have to see it. And certainly if you have any urge to contribute, or if you want to go cook, it's all certainly possible. I put up a GoFundMe, Chefs for Ukraine, which is still open. I'm not here to solicit donations, but I just spoke at the Andover Country Club to a group of food service consultants who had their annual dinner, golf outing and dinner, and 150 people who really understood what it means to put up a food safe kitchen in a matter of days. And they wrote us a check for $15,000. So that was fun to give that talk. And I will continue to do what I can to. I've raised $40,000 now for World Central Kitchen, and Jeff, you know that I'm also working with John Mills on putting up childcare centers in Poland now, because those refugees, those women can't get jobs if they don't have childcare. If they don't have jobs, they can't get decent housing. So that's become an urgent project. I don't know if John spoke here, right?
Yeah, he spoke 2 months ago, right?
Yeah. So now it's the mission is to put up 100 childcare centers in 100 days. We have 32 centers open. And about half of the $15 million that we need to operate them for the first year, get them open and operate them for the first year. And so we're working on that. And we have a psychiatrist out of the US Navy with a PTSD expertise developing a training program for the staffs of the childcare centers. And John's doing an incredible job. He's created an office with him. I don't know, I think he's got 10 people working with him now in Warsaw. And I'm working with fundraisers here and learning about working with foundations and corporate donors. I haven't done as much cooking in the last little while because that's become the urgent focus.
Okay, well, thanks again, and thanks for all the good work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was wonderful
You can't
to
be.
listen to you.
Are we gonna-
Yes, thanks very much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye-bye.